Number one thing that I notice is a lot of postpartum anxiety. It's this feeling of I can't be separated from my child. I don't necessarily trust my partner to take care of my child. Therefore, I have to be the one to respond to the baby at every peep. There's just so much exhaustion there, being really well prepared and really trusting that I know how to take care of the baby and respond to the baby. My partner knows how to take care of the baby. Therefore, I can really truly rest and let some of these anxieties go.
Well, I'm so excited, you guys, today to welcome Julia Kim to the Core Connections podcast. She is the founder and CEO of the Sanu Postpartum Retreat. So I'm going to let her talk more about that, talk about what led her to wanting to start that. As we were just chatting before I started recording about how we have such a lack of postpartum support, especially here in this country. So we are going to dive on in and try to help you ladies. So Julia, will you share a little bit with everybody, especially because you haven't been on this podcast before, a little bit about you and then what led you to starting your postpartum center?
Yeah, so my name is Julia, and I started Sanu Postpartum Retreat in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., about 10 miles outside of the city. And really, my own experiences are what led me to starting this retreat. And I think, with a lot of entrepreneurs, you'll find that their own personal experiences led them to try to find a solution. And for me, it's really the same thing. And, I had my first child 6 years ago. And I was super prepared in terms of pregnancy. And I was just telling Erica that I took her Knocked Up Fitness course. It was amazing. And I was like, okay, I feel
Thank
good.
you.
I'm ready. Yeah, I feel strong. I found my pediatrician after lots of research, read all the books, took all the courses. And so I felt pretty good. And then after I had my baby, the doctors left, the nurses left, and they just kind of left me with my son. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? If he cries, what do I do? It feels a little cold. Is he going to get SIDS? How do I change his diaper? And what is this swaddling thing? Like just all the questions that you might expect. I did not expect to have those questions despite feeling prepared going into the whole experience. And so I thought, okay, this is not the solution. There's no great solution here. What are we going to do for future mothers? What am I going to do for myself if I decide to have another child? And so I looked at what was happening across the globe, really, because there was no real solution here in the States, except for, like night nurses, nannies, who can be wonderful support people in your life. And I highly recommend them. But even there, I felt like I needed more of a transition. So something that comes in between the hospital and being at home fully on your own, even with some support, whether it be from family or nannies or what have you. And so I did a lot of research. It took me 2.5 years to develop our stay or our retreat, as we call it here in the US. And I opened up Sanu January 2nd of this year. So it's about 8
Oh,
months
wow.
old. Yeah, but it was like nearly 3 years coming. And we're just rocking and rolling and trying to be as helpful as we can to new parenting teams. So, not just mothers, but also partners.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we're both in that. I just opened my Pilates studio. So it's a
Yay.
year of lots of new things for us, right? So I love this. So, when it comes to postpartum, and I know like I feel the same way, and I talk and I work with so many postpartum moms, and everyone can have different experiences, but I feel like the biggest one is that you just feel like you said you're left with so many questions. I remember the swaddling one, like you were saying that, and I was like with my oldest, who is now like 17. It's been a while, and I remember like I didn't even understand what swaddling was, so she was like 5.5 months old, and I was like, how did we get here? I was like, I could have used swaddling at, a day old. And like, they just like, here you go, and off you go. And you're just in, I don't know. I just remember that being like, that was like a game changer for me. But it took us to 5.5 months for like a friend of ours to be like, well, have you ever swaddled her? And I was like, well, yeah, but only in like the Velcro ones. And then she would break out of it and her arms would flail and then she'd wake herself up. And then it was just a whole, downward spiral from there. So from postpartum, support, what are some of your top things that you see moms struggling with that are pretty common across the board? And what are some of those suggestions that you have for her?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot. I think the number one thing that I notice is a lot of postpartum anxiety, and it may not need to be on a clinical level, but it's just this feeling of, okay, I can't be separated from my child. I don't necessarily trust my partner to take care of my child. Therefore, I need to be the one who has to be vigilant through the night. I have to be the one to respond to the baby at every peep. Um, so there's just so much exhaustion there. And I just think that being really well prepared and being in a place where you can trust whatever support person that may be. So maybe it's your spouse or partner, right? Maybe it's like your mom, so grandma or a friend or someone, and really trusting that the both of you have the baby care skills that will carry you through those first few nights until, or those first few months, really, before the baby starts getting slightly longer stretches of sleep overnight. Because, oh my gosh, it's hard when you're not sleeping. But just knowing, okay, I know how to take care of the baby and respond to the baby. My partner knows how to take care of the baby. Therefore, I can really truly rest and let some of these anxieties go. I think that can be so, so helpful. Um, and then, obviously there is the recovery piece. Like, you're in pain, you're still bleeding. And that first week after you leave the hospital, you can't even properly have a bowel movement without like, being in pain. And so it's like, okay, you need the support, you need the knowledge, you need good recovery care. And it doesn't have to be clinical, it doesn't have to be in the hospital, but just to have somebody bring you like a peri pad or to have somebody say, oh yeah, your incision looks a little inflamed. So, let's go ahead and call your doctor. Just having support is so important. And for moms who don't live close enough or for whatever reason cannot access a retreat, I mean, the answer could be just finding a really good telehealth provider to that you can call at any time. Having a really good urgent care provider who's nearby, just knowing where to go
Mhm.
for that support can be so hugely helpful. It just takes a mental load off.
A little bit ago, you mentioned it. I think the rest piece is huge. The more that you can, whether it's asking for help or whether it's allowing someone who is offering help to actually help you, like you've said, that I think that's the biggest thing because I see that a lot with postpartum moms that I work with because we do so much work with pelvic floor recovery, waking up all that deep core again. And we'll see, them starting to make progress, but then they'll get regression because they're really tired. And I see them being really hard on themselves. And I have to remind them, look, this is it feels like regression. It's not a true regression. It feels like it because their body is just tired. Their nervous system is just at its wits' end and they just need to rest. And I think that's such a big piece is that there's so many things as a postpartum mom, and especially if you've got other little ones you're trying to like run after, that you really need to ask for and accept people to help you so that you can rest. Because I feel like that's like a foundational piece. We can be doing all the things, but and that rent sometimes it's hard because sometimes you have a baby that for whatever reason is not sleeping very well, or they're colicky, or all those things. And that sleep piece just is like causes the lack of sleep, I should say, causes a
Mhm.
massive cascade of how she feels postpartum.
Oh my gosh, it can affect everything from your mood to your cognitive abilities, just to be able to, do simple problem solving. I mean, sleep is the number one thing that we promote at the retreat, but, and just in general, in life, if you want to be a healthy individual, you have to be sleeping, and that sleep should be healthy, restorative sleep. I mean, there's so much that your body does while you're sleeping. And so I completely agree with you.
So I want to have you talk about breastfeeding a little bit because I know you have your own personal journey with dysphoric milk ejection reflex, which I am not familiar with actually. So will you share that with all of us so we can all learn more and help other moms that maybe are dealing with that as well?
Yeah, so the short name for that very long name is D-MER. And to be honest with you, there are not a lot of people who know a ton about it. And in fact, during my first postpartum journey, I really didn't know anything about this whatsoever. Nobody talked to me about it. And it just, I felt really horrible physically and mentally. And basically, when you have D-MER, the way that you feel physiologically is, for me, it felt like an anvil dropping from my chest to my stomach. You just get that like drop in the pit of your stomach when I had the breastfeeding letdown or even the pumping letdown.
So it's like
Um,
really like an extreme feeling is what it is. Just like the letdown feeling, but to an extreme. Is that what it is,
yes,
kind of? Okay.
yes. And then not only do you feel it physically in your body, but also you feel it mentally, and you feel I felt a little anxious, a little sad, a little irritated. It's just like all of the bad feelings rolled up into one. And I just thought, oh, this must be lack of sleep, or this is just what it feels like to be breastfeeding. And so I really didn't have a clear understanding of what I was going through until I was, in my last month of breastfeeding. I made it 10 months because I wasn't producing enough milk. And so I was power pumping around the clock, supplementing with formula. Plus, I was, back at work full time. And so I made it 10 months and I was like, okay, this is horrible. I started doing some research and there was a little bit out there about D-MER at the time. Thankfully, today there's a little bit more, but I never was able to find a healthcare professional to talk to about the D-MER. Now, when I had my second in the hospital, I mentioned to one of the rounding nurses that, hey, I think during my first go around, I had this thing called D-MER. Do you know anything about it? And she's like, yeah, I can, I can give you a little bit of information. She leaves the room and she comes back with like a handout that she had clearly just printed out. And she's like, here, take a look at this. I think this is what you're talking about. And it was about D-MER, but she didn't really talk to me about it. I didn't get a lot of support. So for my second baby, I actually decided to exclusively formula feed him. And that was the solution for me there. Although I wish I would have had more support so I could have at least tried. But there was just, I mean, there was a host of other issues going on. I had pretty severe postpartum anxiety that I didn't know I had at the time, some postpartum depression. And so I think in hindsight, it going all formula might have been the best thing. But as a mom, I wish I would have tried. Just mom guilt.
There's always that mom guilt. We have to like push that to the side. Easier said than done, I know, but sometimes we have to just make the decision that really is the best for baby and for us. And it is what it is, right? So
Yeah.
question for you about this. Have you learned more about D-MER and are there like more natural things that moms can do that maybe are struggling with that can help so it's not quite as intense of that letdown feeling?
Yeah. And so I wish there were more of like a medical strategy or a clinical strategy. But unfortunately, it still seems like the evidence and the studies on D-MER, it's still in its infancy. And so the strategies that are available to us out there really are based around shifting your mindset. And so, for example, if you are breastfeeding, the letdown is coming. What you can do is maybe soak your feet at that moment, soak your feet in a nice warm foot bath or foot soak. Um, and in that way, you are kind of shifting what you're focusing on from this feeling that you're having to a different, more pleasant feeling. And so this isn't a fail-safe method of relieving your D-MER symptoms, but it may help just enough in that moment to get you through. And so a lot of strategies are kind of like that, shift your mindset, focus on something else at the
Right.
moment. And even just talking to somebody who knows what it is and knowing that, hey, I don't just feel badly, and this is just a part of the breastfeeding journey. This is an actual condition. I think that can be so helpful, just recognizing and having acknowledgement that what you're feeling is a real thing.
So it's really more, so from shifting your mindset, it's really about starting to calm your nervous system is really what it's coming down to, is shifting that mindset about it. So if we can find something else to focus on, breathing techniques, music, things like that, focusing on baby, all of that may be helpful for moms in this. But as far as like other things outside of this, there really hasn't been much. Is that what I'm
Right.
hearing you say? Okay.
The key is distracting yourself. So put on a funny show or listen to music, soak your feet, calm your nervous system.
Okay.
Right.
So much of what we deal with in life, I feel like so much of it comes back to having to make that mental shift, having to calm our nervous system. I do so much of that at the studio and working with my clients. Like we're moving, we're getting people feeling stronger. But a piece of that is like we've got to calm our nervous system. And I think coming into that postpartum, we're talking about postpartum moms are so much worse. And then when we're even lack of sleep, right? Then it adds to the anxiety, the nervous system, and all of that. So I think doing some things that help calm the nervous system. And I'm sure that you have a lot of that incorporated with your retreat, techniques that you do. So do you want to talk about some of that? I know you have, you've used your Korean culture to help influence a lot of what you offer and teach at your retreat. Are there some of those things that you can kind of share with our moms that are just like some easy, maybe it's mindset stuff, maybe it's nervous system, shifting or calming that can really help our moms to feel just a little bit better or a lot better,
Yeah.
maybe.
And the way that you described it is so spot on. The distractions, calming of your nervous system. And I'm so glad that, that you're a practitioner of this because I feel like, I'm always trying to learn from experts and bring that in. So much of what we do at the retreat is um, making sure that we're relying on the experts, reading all the studies, and as much as the tradition of postpartum care may have been inspired from my South Korean roots. Really, everything that we do is super, super evidence-based. So if there isn't a good study that backs up why we're doing certain things, we don't employ them. And that's not to say that there are wonderful practices that you can incorporate into your postpartum journey that will really work for you. It may just mean that, hey, the study hasn't been done yet. Who's to say that thousands of years or hundreds of years of tradition of doing certain things isn't going to work for you? And that's absolutely not what we're saying. I think the one thing that we really try to emphasize is preparation. And so, and I say that because so many of the parenting teams, the mothers and the partners who come through and stay at our retreat are super type A people. They're just like me. And so being type A, um, you know, How do you calm your nervous system is feeling as prepared as you can be, knowing that you have support and just being on top of your game. And despite these mothers and partners being extremely exhausted, they know that, hey, I am here so that I can do postpartum right. And, that feeling of being prepared and cared for, I think can really allay their nerves. And so that is really the crux of what we offer. And also everybody on our team is trained to be just a sympathetic, compassionate caregiver, even our management. So even if you are on our admin team, the way that we have trained them to respond is non-judgmental, very compassionate. We got you. We have your back, right? If we don't know, we will find out and we will provide you the best that we can, the best that science has to offer.
I love
Mhm.
that. Yeah. And something you said really made me think of something I've done all these years when I work with our pregnant moms is that towards that last, part of their pregnancy, I'm always talking to them about postpartum. I think this is a big piece that gets missed in this postpartum is that we don't think about postpartum until postpartum. And we need to be thinking and talking about postpartum during pregnancy. Like where are we going? What do we have for support? Whether that's being able to go to your retreat, which would be amazing. But again, not all women can do that. So what support do you have set up for you? Like you said, in that planning, it just can take that extra edge off so that you feel better, you feel more prepared. And even if you're not a type A person and you're someone who is better at just going with the flow, it's still great to have a little bit of a plan so you know where you're going, and have that support. So that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing, right?
Yeah. And just hands-on training. So you would be surprised at how many parents are afraid of giving baths for their little ones. Like that, those first few baths are so harrowing. And I get it, right? Because I've been there. But things like that, the things that they haven't had hands-on practice doing. And I have found that when you have that level of anxiety or fear or just confusion around doing something really essential like that, you tend to put it off. You put it off and you put it off until baby has a diaper rash, until baby's hair is matted to his head. And so, just again, getting, hands-on training, being prepared, starting the conversation early so you know what's to come. And yeah, I mean, the time to start talking about postpartum, although it's never too late, right? But it's really while you're still pregnant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest piece that gets missed. And I've had moms over the years, like it kind of shocks them initially when I want to have the postpartum conversation. And then I have to explain to them, like, we need to have this conversation. You know what to expect postpartum, things to just be aware of and know. And I have so many moms that I don't get to work with them during pregnancy, right? They don't come to me till they're postpartum because we're dealing with extreme pelvic floor stuff or back pain or, something like that. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have done this so much sooner. I hear that all the time, and it's like, well, it's never too late, right? That's the thing too, is it's never
Mhm.
too late. Even when you're postpartum and all of that. And I will just plug this because in the work that I do and because we're talking to postpartum moms is that pelvic floor work, right? I think that gets neglected so much. Find yourself a good pelvic floor physical therapist. If you're not jiving with the first one that you go to, look for someone else. And you may or may not have other options. But I think that that can be so empowering for women. I think it's great to do during pregnancy, even if you have that ability or being able to find someone because as women, we don't learn about our bodies. And that's a lot of this. This is where I love to educate moms about their bodies and what's changing during pregnancy because believe it or not, a lot of moms don't really understand the changes that are truly taking place during pregnancy, what goes on postpartum, and all of that. And I think when we can like really empower with knowledge in that prenatal, that postnatal era, then women can really start to like just I feel like it's empowering, right, Julia? Like
Hmm.
just to learn because we aren't taught this. We aren't taught the changes that really take place. Like you might get a little bit of it, but we don't really understand, like the relax. And I get so many moms postpartum, they want to get right back to their exercise and working out. And I'm like, well, let's have a conversation about that. Like, if you want to get right back to running, I don't recommend that because the risk of pelvic organ prolapse and causing more problems are really high because of the relaxin in your body. And I explained to her why and give her, the education. But hey, like instead of doing that, let's do this because,
Hmm.
it's not like, oh, you can't do anything. It's about really educating her about her body so she can really make the best informed decision so that she's healing better and not causing more problems. Because I
That's
just,
such a good
yeah,
point.
yeah,
You know, there's two ends of the spectrum on that. There are some women who are like, I believe or I've been taught that you're not supposed to do
yeah.
anything, no movement, no anything. And then you have other moms who are like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna, I want to start hit training right away, right
Yeah.
away. But
Yeah.
it's like we need to break through the miseducation, the misinformation about, what are the safe things to do in those
Yeah.
first few weeks. And fortunately, it's not nothing. You shouldn't just, sit around
Mm-mm.
like, especially if you had a C-section, you have a risk of deep vein thrombosis. So we do want to get you walking, right? We do want to
Mhm.
get you moving. You may not want to go swim laps or run sprints, but there are certain things that you can be doing. And so let's talk about that more. What is safe for you? What is going to make you feel better and help you recover? And there's just not enough conversation around that. We don't know our bodies
Mhm.
and we don't know what we can and shouldn't be doing.
I know. It's like we need to be moving. And I like to tell my early postpartum moms, you want to think about your movement as movement. I don't think about it as exercise. We're trying to slowly work ourselves back in to just moving our body, starting to reconnect with our pelvic floor, deep core. It feels great to be able to like lay on your back now, starting to lay on your stomach and just starting to like lengthen and start to realign your body. And when I hear these conversations about like, oh, no exercise until 6 weeks, and I'm like, all I think about is how much strength we lose in those 6 weeks, because, and then here's my other piece with all this is that right? We're doing things, we're living life. We're not moving. This is the thing people have to remember. And this is why I like to look at it as movement in those early postpartum weeks and not just like, oh, we're
Mhm.
exercising, right? Because we're holding baby, we're nursing, we're doing maybe running after other toddlers. So why aren't we thinking about how we're holding baby? How are we moving our body? How are we breathing? How are we starting to reconnect with our body? All these changes that birth that we went through, and there's a lot of recovery going on. Those hips are starting to move back, those ribs are starting to move back, and there's just little gentle things that we can be doing that really I see empowers postpartum moms to just feel better. And that's what we're
Mhm.
here for, right, Julia? Is just to help our postpartum moms just to feel better because lack of sleep and all the things. And if you can weave in a little bit of movement that's like, I like to look at it as nourishing for your body, it can really be a big piece that helps you to feel so much better.
Totally nourishing and preventative. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yes.
let's not be in pain later,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like,
Yep. All
yeah.
the postural shifts that change during pregnancy. And then if we don't fix that, it's still there when you're 60 years old because I work with those clients and it's quite fascinating to me when I'm like, I can see like, I don't know, to me, it's like a pregnancy posture that never leaves. And I can see it time and time again in clients that never learned again, because they just weren't taught that. It's not their doing. It's just, this is not mainstream
Mhm.
movement stuff that we teach clients how, or we
Have
teach moms how
you
to realign.
have you heard about the pregnancy, what is it, the pregnancy gait or like the walk? There's this like shuffle that moms do when they're pregnant because they're moving around this heft, right? And
Yeah.
so it changes the way that they walk. And I think I have to look up where I saw this, but or I read about this, but I think it's starting to, well, maybe not starting to, but a lot of moms are continuing, even in their
Mhm.
postpartum selves, to walk
Yeah.
and carry their bodies in a certain
Yes,
way that's causing a lot
absolutely.
of pain. It's not,
Mhm.
helping them get back to a place where they feel good about their bodies. And so, I mean, the movement piece is so important.
Yes, it is. And I look at movement as like it's therapeutic movement, you guys. Like it is so important. Well, yeah, their gait is changing because their posture is changing. It doesn't have to change. You might have obviously some shifting that happens, but posture does not need to shift the way that it does for so many pregnant moms when you have the education of how to move your body more effective and not get that shuffle. So it
Mhm.
doesn't happen with clients that I work with because we're really keeping them supported and they're learning how to stay supported. That shuffle happens because their hips get really tight and misaligned, and then their body has to compensate from somewhere. Then we
Fascinating.
start having, yep, gait changes. Yeah, it's so funny because I teach this in my instructor training stuff, and we just got done with a full weekend instructor training course, and we were evaluating each other's walking. And it's so fascinating to me. And it's fun to see instructor to be's watching people walk. And they're like amazed at watching people's gait and the difference and how some people like have no rotation in their body. And when people are really stuck in their hips, like how it prevents like them moving their feet right and getting that spiraling and rotation. Like the hips are so important, and our hips really just take a beating during pregnancy, right? They're spreading apart,
Mhm.
but we never are carrying baby perfectly square. So usually we've got a tug of war going on in our pelvis. And it's crazy, but we just have to like educate our moms like how we can keep our pelvis as aligned as possible. There's nothing about perfect, but we try to keep things as balanced and stable as possible. Do you want to know something else that comes up?
Yeah.
And it came up again from the other day. And this is kind of my little, I've gone on this rant before, so I'll try to keep it short. But Julia, something for you to be aware of too. With your moms, those Apple Watches or any of the like smart watches that are constantly emitting EMFs from your body to your phone, change okay, I'm not going to say 100%, can change a woman's gait.
What?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And it was one of the
Tell me
gals that was
more.
in the instructor course. And I've seen it with some clients. I've also seen it with people where it doesn't really affect them because I think they have enough body awareness that it doesn't affect them as much. And everyone's a little bit more affected by EMFs than others, right? Some people are more sensitive. Those who are really sensitive, guys, you got to get those things off your body. I cannot stress it enough. I can't wear one anymore because if I wear something, I need a new Aura ring. I love the Aura ring because you can set the Aura ring so
Mhm.
it's not constantly emitting EMFs. You like dump it once or twice a day. But those smartwatches that are just constantly emitting EMFs to your phone, it is messing with people's balance. It is messing with people's gait. It was so crazy. Just again the other day, it was reaffirmed to me because we were practicing our walking, and one of our instructors, she was walking, and I was like, she looks really more unstable than I expected her to be, and really kind of more stuck in her hips than I expected her to be. And then I was like, oh, she's got her Apple Watch on. Let's see what happens. I didn't say anything to her. I just said, hey, hand me your Apple Watch, and I want to see you walk. I said nothing more than that. And she walked, and the difference, oh my gosh, Julie, it was
I mean,
phenomenal.
it's immediate.
Like that. Like that. All of a sudden, her hips were more open, her gait was better, she was taller. Like there's still room for improvement, but it was noticeably, dramatically different. And I didn't say anything. And as she was walking down away from us, she goes, holy, like something like, holy smokes, like, wow, I can feel the difference. And I didn't even prompt her anything. And everyone could see it. It was, and I've had that with other clients too. And it's like, it's shocking. It's like I don't even have the right words other than like I just am continually shocked the amount of people that are affected by it, and then we're wearing that all day long. And then I start to think we'll try to not get us off topic, but kids that are
I'm
around cell phones and
fascinated.
smartwatches. So when you have your postpartum moms and there's so much healing going on and we're trying to get them to reconnect with their body, like the smartphones, the phones, like they really need to not be on their body
Oh
because
my
it's
God.
it's affecting their their energetic system, right? We are all energetic beings. Fascia emits like energy runs through our fascia. Well, fascia is all of our body, right? And so anyway, something to think about too, especially with moms. It always makes me think too, with moms that are dealing with anxiety, with a little postpartum stuff. I'm like, how are our devices affecting us? And I think like when we're healing postpartum, we trying to reconnect with our body. Like personally, I think all that stuff needs to like, got to take a break from it. And then ultimately, like they can make a decision as to whether, it's worth it. It's like, I'm like, hey, if you need to have your watch on because you got to be out of the house and your kid or husband, something's going on, like fine, but like pick and choose. So anyway,
Oh
I know
my
I've
gosh.
shared something like that before on the podcast, but speaking with postpartum moms, I'm like, we need all the help we can get in that
So I just
postpartum. And
wrote that down.
so
I just
we,
took notes. I just took notes on that. So, I love learning these new things. And I'm always trying to bring innovation
Mhm.
into what we're doing. We want to be the best at
Yeah.
at the retreat. We want to provide a really good value. And so I want to be on the cutting edge of what we know, right? We cannot continue to do things in the same way or be afraid to bring in new innovations or learnings. And so I'm always learning new things. And,
Yeah.
thank you for providing more knowledge.
You're welcome. I don't know if there's research really out there on gait balance changes with that, but I'm sure at some point there will be. But and I love, like you said, all the research, and as much as possible, I love to be able to back things up with research, but research is getting very hairy, so it's sometimes hard to always find research to back everything up. Sometimes you're like, this just works really well.
Yeah,
You know?
no, and I totally think that that's fine. Like, if there's a practice or something that you're doing that you really believe in and it makes you feel better and it makes a difference, oh my gosh, do it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Absolutely. So, Julia, is there anything else we haven't talked about yet that you really want to make sure that you share with our postpartum moms?
It's so funny because, depending on who I'm having the conversation with, because I get asked a lot of similar questions, but I respond in a different way. Sometimes I'll talk about like the cost of not treating mothers, right? Whereas I feel like for that, for this conversation, it isn't completely where we want to go. But I do want to talk a little bit about bringing your partner into whatever strategies you have going on to aid in your recovery and your postpartum journey. I mean, there is one little statistic that I like to share, which is the fact that, 18% of partners get postpartum depression. Um, I think there is a lot to be said about a partnership with a co-parent and how you can support one another. And at our retreat at Tanu, we really believe that the best postpartum partner you can have is your spouse or co-parent. They should really be the one to kind of help you through this recovery period, this period of change, and you help each other, right? And so, um, in your household, it may not be a spouse or a partner. It may be a sister or a friend or a coworker or somebody there, but just making sure that you have a good support person, I think is so important. And if they can't be there in person, maybe they can be there for you virtually. What if you decided to go on the parenting journey alone and you had a sperm donor, or if you had some sort of non-traditional childbirth or parenting plan, having a support person, even virtually, or support people virtually, how can you be there for each other? Um, and I think just acknowledging that this is a time when your body's changing, you're changing mentally, and you're doing all the things that make you feel better. I think it's just so important. And I'm so glad to be having a conversation with somebody who really is an expert in movement, because I feel like, again, we don't talk about that enough,
Yeah.
right? It's for our moms, it's very much like, oh, I've been told that I should just rest and be off my feet and, not really do much. And I'm like, well, you should definitely rest.
Yes.
That
Yes.
part is right.
It's a little bit of a balance with that. Yes.
Yes.
Well, Julia, this has been such a great conversation with you. I think it's so needed. So, moms out there listening, even if you're not postpartum, or if you are, or soon to be, or in the future, share this conversation with others, even if it's just get good little reminders. I think sometimes too, we think, oh, once we've already had a baby, we've already done the postpartum thing, but it can be different with next, pregnancies and postpartums, and hopefully better, right? We can make it better each time with them and offering more support and more knowledge and all of that. So, Julia, thank you so much. Can you share with everyone where they can reach out to you to, learn more about what you offer at your retreats, if they have specific questions for you, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is hanupostpartum.com, all one word. And we're also on Instagram and Facebook at Hanu Postpartum Care. You can email us at hello@hanupostpartum.com. We will get back to you right away. We're always looking to be a resource, even if you don't end up staying with us. Just, reach out at any time.
Awesome. And I will be sure we will put the links to everything so you guys can find that in the show notes on the blog. And of course, as always, you can always reach out to me with any questions on Instagram at Erica Zeal. So, Julia, thank you so much. And thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll see you guys back in a couple weeks.